Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is principle centered living. Many of you probably remember the great Stephen Covey. He wrote a book many, many years ago called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things Dr. Covey really focused on in the book was the idea of living a principled centered life. It wasn't the entirety of the book, but it's really was one of the foundational principles to really govern your life. He talked about being effective, and a lot of what he said was to have a bedrock of sort of principles that really you can govern your life by. And I really swallowed that up and started working on it years and years ago. And for the entirety of my adult life and especially my business life, I have used a set of principles that I've worked on over the years. And I tend to think of them sort of like lines on a road. You know, you have the fog line on the outside and a line down the middle to tell you where you shouldn't cross the line. Keeps your car headed in the right direction. You sort of can steer using them. And I think of principles often in the same way, that they really keep you pointed in the right direction and keep you on track and let you know when you're starting to get too close to the line and so forth. And for me, I've thought about, journaled about, written about, and talked about principles because they've really helped me govern my life, both my personal and business life. So, what I want to give you today is a list of principles that I have lived by, and hopefully a framework for which you can adopt the same and really accelerate your performance and your ability to succeed. So, let's just get right to it. So, number one, if you could please go hit that subscribe button and like this video, it helps us continue to create content and give you continuous videos out there to help your business and leadership practices. So I'd really appreciate that. So thank you. So let's get into it. So starting with number one, a bedrock principle that I like to think of at least as a bedrock principle is discipline. You can't do anything else on the list if you don't have basic discipline to write them down, to think about how you're going to conduct yourself. And so what I mean is literally getting out a journal and a pen and deciding how you're going to operate in the world. And that is a discipline in and of itself. And so that to me is the first principle I really live by, is if I'm going to do something, I want to do it in a disciplined way. Even getting up in the morning, I make my bed, brush my teeth, get ready for work, do all the things that we need to do to be functional. And that's a good example of there's got to be discipline around that. If there's not, it's just haphazard, it's not organized, and it won't work. So I really start there with discipline. Number two on the list, and these aren't in necessarily ranking order, but really kind of in a way order of importance, is respect. And when I say respect, I mean respect for myself and respect for others. Because if you can't have basic self-respect, it's hard to operate in the world. But that also translates to respecting other people, because you don't want to be just full of yourself and self-love without caring about your communities, about your family members, your coworkers, and so forth. And to me, again, a foundational principle, when you are a respectful person operating in the world, people tend to see you that way. They reciprocate respect, and it's, again, just foundational to being a successful person. You can't go around trashing people all the time and expect them to respect you and treat you well. Number three on the list is responsibility. And again, not necessarily in a particular order, but this one also is very foundational. When I say responsibility, I mean taking responsibility for everything in your life. Whether it's your house or your checkbook or your job or your children, even things that don't go well or you don't do well. Because in responsibility is freedom. Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about this. And he talks about even in a concentration camp in Germany, he was able to find a little tiny bit of freedom between things that happened to him and his response to them. And he talks a lot about this, about his responsibility, his ability to respond. And when I say it, I mean it in that way, but also really taking responsibility or accountability for those things that you didn't do so well. That you stand up and you say, hey, it was my fault, didn't mean to do that. That you do the right thing and own it, constantly own it. Because in that, again, is the possibility of changing the direction of your life. If you're a person that comes from a perspective that nothing is your fault, you take responsibility for nothing in your world, it's really hard because how are you ever going to build from that if you don't recognize your part in it? It's really, really hard to start being successful if you think it's everybody else's fault all the time. Integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. And it is crucial to life to have integrity. Inside of integrity, you think of terms like honesty, straightforwardness. All those things roll up into this general term of integrity because people will learn to count on you if you have integrity. I can tell you that for me, people count on me. They believe I'll tell them the truth. I'm not going to screw them over. Again, integrity is crucial to the way my life has worked, and it builds trust. And trust is fundamental if you're going to run a business, if you're going to run a house, if you're going to have a marriage or any relationship. You got to be able to have trust, and it all starts with having integrity. The next one is really important to me, and this is courage, because a lot of times we're faced with crippling fear in life. We don't want to change. We don't want to move because we're worried about the consequences of doing that to like a new job or something. And yeah, things can be scary. And I can tell you, I've met so many people that have stayed in jobs for decades because they're just so afraid of what might be on the other side of the fence. Now, I can tell you, when I went out and started my company at 27 years old, I just quit my job one day. And I had a lot of confidence that it was going to work out. I had a lot of the right relationships, but there was no certainty at all that it was going to work out. I had to get big contracts with the state, liability insurance, hire people, set up a business. And doing all those things, I had never done them before. And so to be able to go out and do that, sure, there was fear. Sure, there was discomfort. Sure, there was anxiety. But I just forged ahead one step at a time and eventually built a company of 35 staff in 40 counties in the state and serving children's mental health. It's one of the pride points of my life, but the biggest pride is not the success of the company itself. It's really that I had the courage to go and step out and do it, because I get to take that with me the rest of my life and think about, well, everybody else was telling me all the reasons it wouldn't work. And I heard a lot of fear language from people, things like, there's 19 other people doing this. Why do you think you would be successful? Back then, I would listen to those and go, gosh, maybe they're right. Maybe they know more than I do. But I can tell you this. I listen to people that have actually gone out and done it now, not those that tell you they can't. Those are the people you want to really listen to, that have had the courage to do something and go out and take a little risk and see where it goes. It doesn't always work out. Things haven't always worked out for me. Sometimes I've taken a job and a few months in or a few weeks in said, wow, did I make a mistake here? And I was ultimately able to course correct. And you can do that, right? You can go out and try something as long as it's not something really stupid that's going to be fatal. I wouldn't recommend throwing your entire life savings into Bitcoin or something and hoping it's going to work out. I mean, you want to take calculated risks, but for sure, without any courage and letting fear consume you, you're never going to move ahead. So the next principle that I want to talk about is compassion. This is sort of a balancing principle for me, because you can get caught up in action and moving ahead and go, go, go. And you got to remember that people are hurting and people have baggage, and you never know what somebody's carrying with them in life. And so I often remind myself to step back and say, remember those that may be disabled or elderly or confused, or even the homeless guy on the street. You know, nobody ever wakes up as a 5-year-old or 10-year-old kid and says, I just can't wait to be a homeless person when I grow up. So it's important to carry some compassion with you. And for me, again, it's a balancing principle in my life. So the next principle I want to talk about is crucial to making all the rest of them work in a lot of ways, and ultimately crucial to success for sure, especially leadership, and that's to take action. No matter what you do, you can write down things and plan and daydream all day long, but if you don't ultimately step out there and do something and take some action, you're never going to move ahead. So for me, I often remember this as a foundational principle again, and think about, where is the step that I need to take? What is the next thing I need to do? Because inaction will just give you the same results you've gotten, or potentially even worse. Something might be coming at you and you don't do anything about it, and you will be capsized or, have something happen to you. And so for me, I look for that step, look for that next step, look for the next thing to do to try to really move forward. And again, I've written it down as one of my key principles in life. And the last one, which encompasses sort of all of these, and again, this list is not exhaustive, and there are other things that I do from time to time, cross out, add to, or noodle on from time to time, but that's equanimity. And that's actually a Buddhist principle around calm abiding in all situations. Sometimes, the world can get really chaotic and crazy, especially these days with politics and media, and, we're outside of the COVID-19 pandemic now, but there was a lot of people that were really struggling and social unrest and so forth. And so to be able to have a calm abiding and a calmness within all that, not to put yourself in a place where you just act like nothing matters. What I mean is let the storm brew all around you, but find calmness in the eye of the storm, and keeping yourself righted when all of those are losing their minds around you is really an important principle for me, because you make better decisions when you don't just knee jerk. So that's my list. Again, it's not exhaustive, but it's really a set of principles that I have worked on over several decades now. I keep a journal at my desk and occasionally will introduce something new to the list or cross something off, but it's a constant editing and reminding of the principles that I like to live my life by. And they've been foundational and important to helping me develop in the world. And hopefully you can find the same. And I would recommend that start today, get out that pen, get out a journal, and just start working through it. And you could maybe use this list or add your own, whatever you want to do. But thank you so much for listening today. Just appreciate your time. Please, again, subscribe and hit that like button, and go out there and lead.